every day to listen and learn, reflect and commit to reconciliation and encourage others to do the same. Welcome to everyone who is listening to and participating in today's meeting on Budget 2023 consultation. Our committee is currently seeking input on the next provincial budget. British Columbians can share their views by making written comments or by filling out the online survey. Details are available on our website at bcleg.ca/FGS budget. The deadline for input is 3 p.m. on Friday, June 24th, 2022. We will carefully consider all input to make recommendations to the Legislative Assembly on what should be included in Budget 2023. The committee intends to release its report in August. For today's meeting, all presenters will be making individual presentations. Each presenter has 5 minutes for their presentation, followed by up to 5 minutes for questions for committee members. To assist presenters, there is a timer here which will count down 5 minutes in green for your presentation time, and for the question period, the timer will then count up to 5 minutes in red. All audio from our meetings is broadcast live on our website, and a complete transcript will also be posted. I now ask the members of the committee to introduce themselves, starting with the Deputy Chair.
Hi there, I'm Corinne Kirkpatrick, and I'm the MLA for West Vancouver Capilano.
Hi, Renee Merrifield, MLA Kelowna Mission.
Good morning, Mike Startuck, MLA Surrey Cloverdale.
Hi everyone, Harvinder Sandhu, MLA for Vernon Monashi, and as a former resident of the Terrace, I'm happy to be back.
Henry Yao, MLA for Richmond South Centre.
My name is Ben Stewart. I represent Kelowna West.
Brenda Bailey, MLA Vancouver Falls Creek.
Assisting the committee today are Jennifer Errol and Emma Curtis from the Parliamentary Committee's Office, and Amanda Heffelfinger and Simon Delat from Hansard Services. So we'll now ask our first presenter, Alison Thompson with the Canadian Geothermal Energy Association, to start off with our first presentation.
Bonjour, hello. My name is Alison Thompson, and I am a co-founder and chair of the Canadian Geothermal Energy Association, CanGEA. I am delighted to be presenting today on National Indigenous Peoples Day in Terrace because it's home to CanGEA member Kitsilus Geothermal's Fuel for Reconciliation geothermal project. I am joined by my colleague, Dr. David Try, a PhD economist and also Kitsilus First Nation senior treaty negotiator, and he'll be on hand with me today for the Q&A after my remarks. CanGEA would like to elaborate on 3 recommendations outlined in our written submission. First, CleanBC can further its objective to reduce greenhouse gases by making use of geothermal district heating systems to complement BC Hydro's demand-side management programs. Second, the Finance Committee must consider allocating CleanBC funding for no-carbon geothermal district heating customer connections for residential, community, commercial, and industrial buildings. Third, the Finance Committee should prioritize leveling the playing field for the no-carbon geothermal heating industry by providing the same fiscal and regulatory support shown to its low-carbon hydrogen and natural gas-based counterparts. Recommendation number 1. CanGEA believes that a narrow focus on electrification is not necessarily the most effective course of action for the province to meet its energy goals. In many regions of the province, and we believe right here in Terrace, geothermal energy is a lower cost and higher reliability option than electricity for heating. The basis of our proposal is that the government provide funding to have BC Hydro include geothermal district heating solutions to complement its demand-side measures to reduce electricity demand in the province. Presently, BC Hydro focuses on voluntary load curtailment as a demand-side measure to encourage its large commercial and industrial customers to reduce peak electricity demand. Not only will load curtailment option reduce GDP for the province and industrial output, but it does not consider the detrimental trickle-down effects it will have on employees that make up the local economy. Instead, load curtailments could be avoided by implementing geothermal instead of electric heating solutions where geothermal resources exist. We believe that by working together, geothermal heating options would assist BC Hydro's demand-side management, allowing heating customers to use geothermal heat where available, thus freeing up electricity for non-heating customers. We've spoken to BC Hydro about this, and while they seem enthusiastic, they have no clear mandate to proceed. Recommendation number 2. The diversification of the province's heating sources is one of the most effective, efficient, and economical methods to decarbonize and curb the impending threats of greenhouse gas emissions. However, the significant capital and installation costs and associated expenses required to convert existing emissions-intensive heating systems to no-carbon district heating connections impede families, communities, businesses, and industries from making these essential changes without sufficient financial support from the government. These shortcomings became painfully apparent during the scoping out of the Village of Valemount's geothermal district heating system. CanGEA respectfully submits that a government incentive for geothermal district heating projects offered through Clean BC is required to support the transition to no-carbon heating solutions. The financial burdens of converting traditional heating systems to a no-carbon district energy system necessitate bold government action to support and accelerate these efforts. These incentives will drastically reduce emissions associated with heating, create sustainable jobs locally, and facilitate the skills transfer from the oil and gas industry necessary to complement the government's net zero carbon economy ambitions. Incentives of this nature align with the Village of Valemount and other municipal governments' goals to transition to no-carbon heating solutions. Recommendation number 3. CanGEA applauds the BC government's efforts to reduce greenhouse gas emissions in the province through fiscal and regulatory incentives for low-carbon energy solutions. However, the geothermal heating industry faces significant barriers to accessing these essential government supports compared to renewable natural gas, hydrogen, and electric heating incentives. For example, last year's amendments to the greenhouse gas reduction regulations encourage the development of low-carbon energy solutions, but inadvertently tilt support in favor of the aforementioned low-carbon energy solutions over giving support to renewable no-carbon solutions like geothermal energy. Respectfully, there is no rational explanation for excluding no-carbon geothermal heat from government support aimed at facilitating the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions when they are available to other carbon-reducing initiatives. If the government is serious about providing fiscal and regulatory support to demonstrate its commitment to decarbonization, then why isn't it extending identical support to no-carbon geothermal heat to ensure fair, consistent, and effective methods to advance the government's net zero objective and to unlock this province's tremendous geothermal energy potential? Thank you.
Thank you, Alison. I'll now invite members of the committee to ask you questions. Brenda?
Thank you very much for your presentation, Alison. Very interesting, and I appreciated reading your submission. You mentioned a couple of times an example of the city of Valemount, and I think you were using it as an example of kind of showing us why government involvement is necessary. I wonder if you could just tell me a little bit more about that, please.
Sure. The Village of Valemount is actually the most polluted community in all of BC. Not through heavy industry, but through its geographic nature of the 3 mountain ranges. And so they experience temperature inversions, which actually keep the wood smoke in. And why are they on wood? You'd ask for energy because the BC Hydro electricity line, it's a radial line coming out of the Kamloops area, and it basically ends at Valemount. So there's very little electricity left on the line by the time it gets to Valemount. And so it's a high, unreliable area of the province. And so they instead use wood smoke, and they actually truck in propane, both from Alberta and from other parts of BC, because there's no natural gas. And so, but they have hot springs and they have geothermal energy, and but to connect everybody, though, there's going to be a conversion. And so there are incentives for wood stove replacements or for going on to heat pumps, but that just exacerbates the problem of using more electricity on a very unreliable line to begin with. So this is nothing new. I mean, as you probably read in the submission, just even during the pandemic alone, during COVID and the 10 years preceding, there's 300 district heating systems in Europe. Anyone who's traveled there knows that that's not a volcano in every community. We don't need volcanoes to do geothermal energy. We just need a will and a level playing field for the incentives.
Thank you.
Mike.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for your presentation, Alison. Just coming from Surrey, I understand the district energy system that they built in the downtown core that's there. So my question to you is are there areas of the province that can't get into a district energy system because of the climate?
So I'm going to speak on behalf of the geothermal resources industry, and certainly because we're a resource, it's better in some places and not as good in others. I think you can get a really big bang for the buck where you have large populations, but what you need though is space, and better yet if you have an industrial customer. And so the best match to get our industry going in geothermal energy is to find one or two large industrial customers where you can help either augment or completely replace their natural gas or fossil fuel usage. And then that's typically the highest or best use of the heat. Any heat coming off of that, what we would call waste heat, is basically free. You could then distribute it to things like hospitals or schools, but getting into individual customer connections, that becomes the costly endeavor. So I think that the tipping point is to allow us to develop, in conjunction with an industrial or commercial customer, let's get them off natural gas, and then after that, any waste heat, if people had customer connection grants like they do for the other energies, they could work one-on-one.
Henry.
Thank you so much for the presentation. I'm actually very fascinated by reading a lot of information you provided. I'm just wondering, in regarding to tap into British Columbia's geothermal potential, are we still at our infancy stage?
Did you call it the feasibility stage?
I mean the infancy stage.
Oh, infancy, absolutely. Of all the provinces and territories in our country, Yukon and BC have the best, or what I would call world-class resources. You have hot springs exceeding 80 degrees Celsius. For those of you drinking tea or coffee right now, I see many of you are, that's kind of under 20, 30 degrees Celsius. Like, we have more than double that amount physically coming up out of the earth, in abundance. But what we don't have is really like mandates or policies to actually use that energy. Our society grew up with coal and natural gas, certainly hydro, and we're kind of stuck on doing the same old, same old. And now when we have to switch over to something that's local, that kind of impetus isn't there. Many people don't even realize you can use geothermal for heat, but I liken it to like your barbecue. When you light your barbecue, you actually end up with far more heat from your propane than you need to actually cook your food. And so that's such a wasteful use of an energy. And that's the same thing that happens in your house with your furnace or industrial operations. And having geothermal energy, because it's abundant, it's free, it's non-emitting, you can be wasteful with it and deliver a higher temperature, but there's no environmental impact.
Thank you.
Well, we're almost out of time. We have time for maybe one quick question and one quick answer.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you so much for the presentation. I'm a big believer in geothermal. I have installed many a system, love the district energy systems. Would this require a full overhaul of what we currently do, or are there specific pieces of legislation that we would have to do, like the one that you've exemplified in Recommendation 3?
I love this. I'm a chemical engineer, not a policy analyst, but in my read of policy, I call it the comma. Literally, most laws are written, we're just excluded. So they might say electric vehicles, biomass, renewable natural gas, comma, geothermal. It is, we don't need anything really specific, we just need to be included. We need to be at the table.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
Well, we are out of time, Allison, but thank you so much for coming and presenting to us and introducing us to something that, as you say, has been a comma. I myself have wondered why we're not talking more about geothermal in terms of Clean BC and where we could be going. I don't think I have the answers yet, but I have some of the questions, and you've given, speaking for myself, you've given me incentive to do some more personal research. So
great, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And I'll leave cards at your front table if anyone needs to reach out directly. Okay.
And our next presenter is Gurjeet Parhar and Carla Lindstrom, representing Kalem Community School Society. Welcome. Carla. Welcome. So you have 5 minutes to make your presentation. We'll have a timer set up to help you count down the 5 minutes. And then it will start counting up in red, which is the question and answer period. So you have a total of 10 minutes. So without any further ado, Over to you.
Thank you. My name is Carla Lindstrom, and I live, work, and play on the traditional Tsimshian territory of the Kitsum-Kalem and Kitslas people. I am a board of director for the Kalem Community School Society, and sitting with me is Gurjeet Parhar, who is the program coordinator for KCSS. Our presentation is quite simple, not technical at all. We're here to state basically that KCSS is a member of the Universal Healthy School Food Coalition, and that we support the BC chapter's recommendations that have come before you or before this committee today. Our service area for Kalem Community School Society is Terrace, Kitsum-Kalem, Kitslas, Getla Datmex, Gitwin Silk, Lax Gelsep, Ginkgolith, Kitwanga, Stewart, Iskoot, Dease Lake, Telegraph Creek. So the indigenous nations that we serve out into their communities is Tsimshian, Nishka, Gitsan, and Tahltan. The programs and services we offer at KCSS, the Good Food Box, a food share program, farmers market coupon program, fruit registry, community gardens. There are some cooking programs. We do food skills for families, basic chef skills, harvesting and preserving. Our school-specific programs are the school soup program, food share, farm to schools partnerships. At one point, KCSS actually operated under link funding as well, and we provided the school food programs in a few of the schools in the Terrace area, so Parkside, Sualax, and Cassie Hall schools. In an average school year, KCSS supports 3 schools and approximately 300 children per week through our school food programs. 1,200 pounds of fruit, vegetables, legumes, and pastries are distributed per year. We do have an additional recommendation for nutritious food programs for all students, breakfast and lunch. We would like to see it in more than just the 3 schools. And what that does is it decreases the stigma if it's open for all schools, students in the school, because we have actually experienced where some students, well, there were altercations between students because kids were being made fun of for accessing the programs. So if it's open to all students, that stigma is gone. It decreases the hunger in our school system, decreases secondary medical, cognitive, and psychological issues that come up for children caused by poor nutrition. It increases each child's ability to focus, learn, and retain the information they're learning in class, increases their energy, and it increases a child's knowledge of healthy nutrition for positive lifelong health. So then it into future generations as well. So obviously our recommendation is for this committee to approve funding for healthy food programs in schools in the budget of 2023. And that's our presentation.
Thank you so much. And we have questions. Henry and then Renee, and I haven't seen any other hands yet. Harwinder.
Thank you so much for your presentation, and of course your presentation echoes with many presenters we had earlier. So we'll ask a very quick question. Do you propose the funding to support the breakfast or a lunch, or talk about both meal? And will your program also be including teaching kids how to prepare their own food, so the culturally appropriate method as well?
Yeah, so we do. We would like to see breakfast and lunch in the school systems. I mean, obviously, if we had to choose, breakfast would be the one we choose. And we already do have programs that go in and they teach the life skill around not just preparing food, but also harvesting and preserving foods in our area. And we do that for families, and we also do that in the school system.
Renee?
Thank you so much, Chair, and thank you so much for the presentation. I appreciate all the statistics that you brought forward just in terms of learning outcomes when children are fed, and I would agree wholeheartedly. On your recommendation of approving food programs, is there any order of magnitude of what it would cost just for your area or your school society?
I think that
Not in this point, because the food cost is going varies, right? So really, you know, yeah. So like every single day, you go to the grocery store, the prices are up. So how could, right?
Okay.
In this point, yeah, no.
Okay. Thank you.
Harwinder.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you to the presenters. Good to see you, Gurjeet. Just one question. I think I might have missed it. Is there a proposed amount for funding? And will there be a written submission presented to us when we're doing deliberations? Then we can look back. And other question is that, is there any existing funding that's available to the program?
at this point, I mean, there is the link funding that is distributed through the schools now, not our organization, but that does still exist. I don't think it happens to the same extent that it used to, but I don't have the complete facts on what the total amount they receive or anything is at this point. I do know that when we had it, the funding was not increased from year to year to account for the cost of living going up or anything like that, so I would suspect it's similar. We don't at this point have a proposed budget to put forward. I think we're really just here to express the need, whether it's our society that receives the money or the schools receive the money, whatever that looks like. The need is there for the food. And so being out here in the Northwest, you know, we do try to support our local farmers as well. And of course, the food is much healthier when it's coming from the farm to the table than it is when it's shipped up. You know, it retains a lot more of its nutrition that way, being fresh. So we do support local, and we connect with people in community. Gurjeet goes out and she has built relationships, and she meets people who have fruit trees in their yards and gets them signed into a fruit registry. And so just she works very hard to just find every avenue within our community to bring the fresh fruits and vegetables to our children. And then, of course, the food share program that Agatha had started several years ago continues with KCSS, and Gurjeet and her team take care of that as well. So going into our local stores and getting the foods and bringing it out to community as well as into the schools, so that children and families can benefit from that instead of it all just going into the garbage.
Thank you
So to answer your question, no, we don't have a budget. If the opportunity arose, we could put one together.
Okay, thank you so much. And I was wondering if it's possible to do the written submission. However, we've taken some notes, but not sure. Thank you so much. It's incredible what you're doing.
Thank you.
Well, we have less than 2 minutes left, but we have a question from, pardon me?
Got to answer.
Right. Ben, Mike, and Brenda.
Thanks, Carla and Gurjeet. I just wanted to, you mentioned a long list of communities, and when you started there and you went all the way to Telegraph Creek and Dees Lake and Stewart, and I know the route because I did live in Kitimat for a while, and the reason that I'm just kind of wondering is, have you been delivering, or has that been part of the KCSS, has that been part of the territory that you've tried to cover, or you've done small, once-off type of program?
We went there to deliver it. And now we have access to transport to there, and we have built up the community relationship with them and work with those coordinators. And we also went ourselves to do it too.
Yeah.
We've had this presentation from, Victoria and Vancouver, places where transportation is really, it could be in the back of a pickup or something like that. Up here, we know the difference. And I guess the real question is we do need to know if there was the resources, you could actually get it to those communities, because the ones you mentioned, I know how rural and remote they are, so.
Yeah. And actually, now that Gurjeet has made those relationships up there and they've done deliveries for the Good Food Box and Food Share, those communities are expanding into other communities up there like Good Hope Lake. So, and the communities up there, it's, you know, we pay a lot for groceries. Yeah. They're paying at least twice as much as we're paying, right? So for us to be able to do that, it's only because the society is looking for funding and writing grants. So Second Harvest was a grant that we had secured for that to be able to happen.
Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, so really just looking and seeing what's available to support all the communities.
And we do got potatoes from Second Harvest.
Oh, yeah. 18 pallets of potatoes.
45,000 pounds of potatoes was gone within 1.5 days in our. Came on Tuesday afternoon and gone on Wednesday afternoon.
Yeah.
45,000 pounds.
So the need is here.
And then there's in 3 weeks, there's another shipment coming for 20 pallets.
Yeah. So the other, oh, sorry, we're over time.
Sorry about that.
Yeah.
So we've got other people who want to ask questions, but unfortunately they're not going to have time. This is a discussion to be continued on many fronts. And I want to wrap up this part of our morning by thanking you for inspiring us the way you have. And thank you for really putting a deeper meaning of community in a community school. And there are other groups around the province who have also talk to us about a food program in schools, and it's because of our renewed interest in food security. It's very timely to be thinking about this and how to produce food locally and have local access. So thank you so much for adding your voices to this.
Thank you.
So our next presenter is Manon Joyce, who is representing Northern First Nations Alliance Health and Wellness Committee. Welcome, Manon. You have 5 minutes to make your presentation, and then when it turns red and starts counting up, that means we're conscious of the time that's allotted to you for questions and answers.
Perfect. Thank you so
over
much,
to you.
Janet. And thank you so much for all of you who have taken the time out of your day to come and visit with us and to continue with what I know are truly your heartfelt and good works. I am here on behalf of the Northern First Nations Alliance, and I am sitting here with my good friends who sit on that committee, including Mr. Dale Good, Ms. Geneva Mason, Ms. Jerry Inkster, and Ms. Charlene Webb. So again, thank you. So the Northern First Nations Alliance is an alliance of Indigenous nations that have come together to focus on the unique challenges and opportunities faced by Indigenous peoples in Northwest BC. The Northern First Nations Alliance has representation from 4 First Nations, including the Gitxsan, Haisla, Nisga'a, and the Tsimshian, representing 9 Indigenous communities. What I wanted to say is there is no better time than for us to be meeting today, right? Indigenous Day. We need to keep this in mind today. This is a heartfelt presentation. We are dealing with people's lives today as we try to deal with an opioid crisis, ongoing abuse of alcohol. You have visited terrace and you undoubtedly see what is happening on our streets and what is happening to the finest of people who deserve lands-based healing. And we can do that today. We can end the struggle of motherless daughters and the struggle of fatherless sons by addressing a crisis that was first initiated and spoken about more than 6 years ago. So the first recommendation is that the provincial government allocate funding from your 2023 budget to put towards the development and capital costs for an Indigenous detox health and wellness centre in Northwest BC. I am not asking for one centre. I'm asking for 2. My background is in population health and nursing. This is a 2-tier system to truly address opioid use and other substance abuse. The first facility will promise to help 438 people to obtain care through a 2-week intensive detox treatment, lands-based, within the Kitselis territory. The second facility will provide the ongoing care for continued inpatient support in a 45-day program, which offers care to an additional 97 persons annually. Not to mention, the family-based, land-based treatment facility will also be able to provide ongoing outpatient care for our families in a way that is dignified, that is working. And we respectfully ask that you support the First Nations Health Authority, who too agree that lands-based healing is the way to move forward in terms of mitigating and managing what is a crisis that is now beyond control. So we know that in August of 2020, the members of the Northern First Nations Alliance had signed a memorandum. And now in recommendation 2, we ask that the provincial government not only allocate within their budget funding for these facilities, but also for ongoing funding for the continued operations, maintenance, and human resources required to support an Indigenous Detox Wellness Centre in Northwest BC. Please keep in mind this centre may also be open to non-Indigenous persons. It will have the ability to help 438 people a year. We also ask that the third recommendation be to immediately address the public health emergency that was declared on April 14th, 2016. As stated by Dr. Bonnie Henry, the COVID-19 pandemic has affected every aspect of our society and has further exacerbated and highlighted the inequities Indigenous communities continue to face in our healthcare system. And the year-over-year increase in overdose amongst First Nations men, women, and young people is heartbreaking and speaks to the need for a community approach led by our First Nations in collaboration with our provincial system. And I am excited today because I believe you wish to collaborate, and I believe you wish to help address this situation in a manner that will promise to work. And I thank you, and I welcome any questions you may have on behalf of our esteemed committee.
Thank you, Menno. And yes, there are questions. Corinne, followed by Mike.
Thank you very much. I feel your emotion in talking about this. It's specifically in terms of the ask, this specific ask, it's for funding for the capital for 2 projects. For 438 people in the 2-week program, and then it's the follow-up support inpatient 45-day program. Are these programs something, it sounds like they've been designed, they've been, are these new programs? Is this a new way, a new approach? And I understand the land-based piece of it.
Okay, perfect then. So the role that I hold with this group is that I am actually the feasibility study writer, and I am the person who is doing an exercise that is called community asset mapping. It is a little bit different. So what is happening with this initiative is we are taking a look at the community assets which currently exist throughout the Northwest, so that we can partner with our external stakeholders as well as the internal stakeholders, and that we're able to maximize those opportunities of care. So that way we're able to really maximize the dollars in use. So it's a little bit unique. It is not working in a silo, it is working with our stakeholders and our allied healthcare providers.
Thank you very much.
Mike.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for your presentation. The passion that you have here is not unnoticed in any way, shape, or form. And we were talking about a subject that is near and dear to everybody that's in this room. My question is it sounds like it's a unique system, but is it based on something elsewhere in the country?
It's a very, very good question. So I've had the opportunity to go and research an area that is called the Sarah Steele Center that's found in Whitehorse, Yukon. So it's a 3-tier system up in there. It is not completely land-based. It is not land-based, but the internal workings of it are very good. We also have a number of other facilities that we're able to go and draw upon. However, we have to keep in mind in terms of the budget, whenever I take a look at the Sarah Steele Center in 2016, they invested $21 million into that one facility. It's not truly working, but it was the idea of having a 3-tier system, meaning that you would have immediate detox within the first level, and then the second level would have been your 45-day stay in counseling for inpatient, and then the third level was your outpatient care for things like family care and services and ongoing counseling. So we know that the model exists. The issue is it's not truly land space. The other good news is those 2 facilities that I'm taking a look at now, the budget for both of those to be acquired and or built, we are looking at between 20 and 25 million, and that includes operation costs for the first year.
Brenda.
Well, my question was going to be in regards to the cost, which you've just addressed, so I'll just elaborate on that a little bit. And first of all, thank you so much for your presentation. Thank you for being here. I wonder if you've made an estimate on what the operational costs annually might be after that first 20 to 25 million.
That is a very, very good question. So we're looking at less than 3 million a year, and that would be for both facilities. So there would be shared staffing amongst both facilities. I am projecting needed staff between 25 and 30 persons.
Renee.
Thank you so much, Chair, and thank you so much for the presentation. Thank you for being here today. I love that you're coming with this this ready, shovel-ready aspect of project, and for such need. My question is actually on the tiered system and tiered approach. Do you see this as being a voluntary? Do you see this how do you see this as evolving forward? And have you ever costed out that 3rd tier as well? And would you know what that looks like?
So the cost of the third tier would actually be shared with our external stakeholders and counselors within the area that I'm pretty sure that we would be able to go and draw upon, including those internal ones that are now available throughout each one of the health centers that are found in each one of the nations. So we're going to be maximizing on those opportunities. So whenever I talk about the operating costs, I am taking into consideration those costs and support. In terms of, I'm trying to remember the first part of your question, Renee. I think you've answered it. Was that all of it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
It's just if you've considered the 3rd tier.
Yeah.
Oh, the involuntary.
Yeah, so that is one of the unique principles that I want to draw upon with the Whitehorse Center, is people can self-admit. We are going to remove the barrier of a 16-page application form for people who are trying to go through a detox, and people will be able to self-admit. So we're going to be able to have a process in place in order to eliminate that particular barrier. Thirdly, I wanted to share with you folks, we have options. We have an option to purchase facilities which are near turnkey, options to purchase facilities which would need extensive renos, and third, to build. And my recommendation is find those turnkey facilities, and I believe we have 2 outstanding ones in the area, so that we can actually begin, not shovels in the ground, opening doors before 2023. I will share with you that my feasibility study will be done by the end of October. Now, at this point, we have all of the external community assets marked, and I'm just looking to continue with the studies for internal assets. So at the end of October 2022. Thank you.
Thank you, Manon. Thank you for your presentation, and thank you for not being overwhelmed by what seems to be an overwhelming crisis that touches us all in this province. Your sense of hope and your sense of belief is really inspiring, and thank you for believing that we want to work with you on this, and that this is something that we can do together.
Absolutely. Thank you folks.
Thank you very much.
And have a wonderful rest of your day.
You too.
Happy first Indigenous Peoples Day.
Yes, and happy to you. Bye-bye. Our next presenter is Floyd Wickie, representing Eliza's Village. Welcome, Floyd. You probably by this point have seen the drill.
Yes.
You have 5 minutes in green to make your presentation, and then 5 minutes counting up in red for questions and answers.
Okay, thank you.
So whenever you're ready.
Well, thank you for letting me appear. And as you all know, timing is everything. So one of the things that happened to me this morning is I got one of these messages that said, whatever you do today, do it with the confidence of a 4-year-old that's wearing his favorite superhero t-shirt. I didn't have time to go get a t-shirt, and I didn't have a time machine to take me back to. But we're going to give this a shot here, okay? So Eliza's Village is a multifaceted housing facility that we want to put in the community of Thornhill. Now, Thornhill is adjacent to the city of Terrace. It's just across the river on the east side. Population of around 4,500 people, right? It is actually governed through the regional district of Kitimat-Stikine. It is electoral area E. And it is a septic tank community, right? So most of the septic tanks were put in around the 70s and 80s, and a majority of them are starting to fail. We had our first meeting with the public, and we had public meetings, right, in Thornhill, and that was in February of 2015. Since then, we've had about 12, 13 public meetings getting input from the public. We've also had meetings out at the Gittiaus First Nations, which is Kitsillas, and on Culspy, which is in First Nations in Thornhill itself. We've met with Northern Health, First Nations Health Authority, Pacific Northwest Division of Family Practice, CMHC, BC Housing, different faculties within UBC, UNBC, and Simon Fraser. From the public, we learned that this should be financially sustainable. So we would want to make it along the lines of a social enterprise. Instead of having, because we first pitched, let's do a seniors. And instead of that, from our public meetings, we got, let's make it a village style. Let's make it so that we could have young families in there, we could have seniors in there, right? And so that what happens with that, we then start getting, one other thing that was brought up was the intergenerational knowledge transfer, right? And because we're a diverse country, the intercultural knowledge transfer. So we actually start to humanize people as opposed to demonizing, which we are doing now. Environmentally, they wanted to still be looking forward to put us a modular sewer treatment plant in there, right, that had discharge to stream water so you could use it for landscaping for the toilets within the facility, and an anaerobic biodigester so we could make greenhouse gas because we want to do district heat. From Northern Health, we learned that there's a need for a memory care or dementia care, and they would work with us to have that put in. Right? The other thing that we learned is that over 25% of the acute care beds that are in the hospital are taken up by people that shouldn't be there. They should be in what's called alternate levels of care. And they're more than willing to work with us to put those in place. What we did find out when we talked to other people is like the Northwest Division of Family Doctors, right? They wanted to do something that was called one door, so that you had a medical doctor, you had a nutritionist, a therapist, and that fits into the alternate levels of care. It fits in there. We found that there should be some pilot projects that we wanted. Right? One of them might be nurses. We bring people over from developing countries that have got a nursing degree, but we don't recognize it. So maybe we could have a program where we had the nurses here, right? And worked with the regulatory people and the other universities to get them up to a level that we can use them. So what we need is land. We've had 3 shots at land, right? 2 that are Crown, 1 that is fee simple, right? I don't have enough time to go into why we don't have them, but we have another piece of land of Crown land that we have got. So the one thing I want to leave is Minister Dix said that in the start of this year that municipalities are stopping or putting blocks up to housing facilities. Well, this is a chance for the province to show leadership, because where we're at now is that the land, right, is province, is Crown land, right? The subdivision would be under the Ministry of Transport and Infrastructure, which is province, right? Environmental would be the environmental Department of Environment. So this is a perfect chance for the government to show leadership in implementing this.
Thank you, Floyd. And there are questions. So I've seen Henry, Corinne, Brenda, and we'll take it from there.
Okay.
Just a quick question, actually.
Sure.
Is this a long-term care facility or affordable housing, complex housing, or supportive housing?
It's everything.
So it's everything.
So we started out as seniors, so that's obviously part of it, all right? But how do we make this as a social enterprise? How do we, part of funding for it, all right? Because Northern Health has the operating capital to make this work, but they don't have the building capital, all right? So they would be willing to work with us, and we would work out the agreement is, do we build it and they lease it, all right? Or do we build it and run it and they pay?
Corinne.
Thank you very much, Floyd. Many questions, but I'll focus it. Do you have what you need right now to do a feasibility study? There's a lot of information here.
Yeah.
I love the intergenerational piece of this, but in order to get to a place where you can bring it forward for zoning, you can bring it forward to the province to actually attach funds to it, do you have the resources to do that piece of this?
We were working with the Ability Society, and unfortunately during the pandemic, all right, we've lost that connection right now. We have to make it back up, all right. The resources once we got land, all right, then we can start looking at what we can put money into, all right. And we during the package I sent you is the 3 pieces. We've actually had architectural concept drawings done for the 3 pieces of land that we identified. So once we know we got the land, it's not going to take much for the province to say, yeah, let's have this land, right? Then we can start those studies.
Great, thank you very much.
Brenda and then Ben.
Thank you for your presentation, Mr. Wiki. I know we put you in a pinch to give you 5 minutes to talk about such a big thing. But I wasn't sure that I understood the connection between the challenges you have with those old septic systems, yes, and how you ended up focusing on this village model. Is it just that that change there's a lot of change that needs to happen there, or how does that piece fit into the model that you're working on?
That's a great question, because it was something I could have took another 10 minutes talking about, all right? We don't have a reason for sewer, all right, in Thornhill, all right? If you want to build the sewer, all right, you have to build it and then, connect to it, right? So if we built a modular system that was expandable, right, it would allow the different areas of Thornhill, because it's a fairly spread out community, right? And the big cost is not necessarily the sewer treatment plant. The big cost is what they call the PIG, the pipe in the ground. So they have to dig the mains over to that. You're not going to do it all at once. That's going to be a 10 to 15 year process of one area doing it, and then another area doing it, and then another area doing it. And some areas might not get connection to sewer, but it gives a reason for sewer to go forward.
And that's the connection. Thank you.
Yeah.
Ben.
Thanks, Floyd. I just, the Crown land,
yeah,
it needs sponsorship.
Yes.
And that's kind of what you need to do. And I think in order to my colleague's question about the feasibility, I think that if there is, a plan that can at least look on paper like it can do what you say, be a social enterprise, self-sustaining, I think that probably would be easy enough to find a sponsor in that. I don't imagine that the land in Thornhill is out of reach versus downtown, Vancouver or something like
Okay,
that.
so the first time we applied, all right, we identified a piece of land, 40 acres, right in the heart of Thornhill. We said, well, we went to the RD for it, and they said, we can't do anything, we're in the middle of an OCP, right? So in the middle of the OCP where no one can do anything, the province then gave that piece of land, along with a lot more of it, to the Kitsless for approval of the LNG to go forward. So we lost that one. We applied for another piece that we found, right? And we put it in, and they came right back and said, no, we have to worry about what's happening with other things. Right? The third piece we found was this fee simple. We put a full price list on it, right? Full list with some conditions, right? It was accepted, but then COVID came along, and we couldn't get the public meetings for the zoning, right? And so we needed an extension, and the vendor had someone that gave them a full price offer with no conditions. So he didn't give us the extension. Right? So we do have another piece of land that is identified, right? And we've asked for a meeting with Minister Dix and through our MLA, and we haven't heard anything back. It's nothing, right?
Well,
yes.
You've left us with that thought to follow up on. Thank you so much for not just for your presentation, but for your leadership, for your enthusiasm, for what is actually quite an exciting model. And thank you for persisting, even though you've had these struggles with the land. The idea of a village, as you've described it, is, I think, something that we would all someday like to live in.
Yeah, there's so much positive from it.
Yeah.
If you do happen to get us a meeting with Minister Dix and Mr. Cullen and help that, you will each get your own superhero T-shirt. I will make sure that happens.
Okay.
Okay?
That's a good motivation.
All right. Thanks so
you,
much. I
Floyd.
do appreciate your time.
Clark Kent only had glasses. And I'm telling you right now, you're Clark Kent.
Oh, okay. There you go. Thanks so much.
Do we
Thanks.
have your contact number? We can give it to Minister Collin.
It's in the sheets. I don't have it.
Okay, so we'll get it from them.
we
pass
have
your
it.
message.
If you do, I'd really appreciate it. Okay. Thanks so much.
Bye-bye.
Take care.
And our next presenter is Ken Veldman, representing the Prince Rupert Port Authority. Welcome, Ken. You have 5 minutes to make your recommendations and elaborate on them. We have a timer that will count down your 5 minutes.
No pressure.
And then it'll turn red and count up the next 5 minutes, which is the time we have to ask our questions and give you time to answer those questions. So it's just a guideline here.
Fantastic. Well, I'll not waste any time and jump right into it. My name is Ken Veldman. I'm the Vice President of Public Affairs and Sustainability for the Port Authority in Prince Rupert. It's certainly my pleasure to be here. Prince Rupert is the third largest port in Canada, which may come as a surprise to some people. And we've more than doubled in size over the past decade, offering both bulk and containerized supply chain solutions for imports and exports. We play a critical role in not just market access, but enhanced competitiveness and diversification, adding value to many of BC's vital industries, such as forestry, mining, natural gas, agriculture, manufacturing, and tourism from a cruise perspective. The business of moving international trade is also a key economic driver in and of itself for northern BC. We compete with other gateways along the West Coast, and the almost 4,000 women and men directly employed throughout this region have proven to be amongst the best in North America at what they do. The result has been an expanding high-wage industry that drives indirect and induced economic activity for businesses and communities throughout northern BC and provides significant taxation revenues for all levels of government. The past 18 months have emphasized the consequence of supply chain breakdowns. delays, lack of product availability, and rising prices have all impacted both industries and families. More specific to BC, infrastructure vulnerability and the lack of recovery capacity has highlighted that even more. An over-reliance on a dominant trade gateway, namely Vancouver, has proven to be a significant risk point for BC and for Canada. Prince Rupert is Canada's leading edge for the trade solutions that we need. The Port of Prince Rupert has a demonstrated track record of delivering innovative solutions that have positively disrupted supply chains for over a decade. We currently have more than $2.5 billion of planned project investments in advanced or are under construction phase in our port expansion portfolio. The delivery of these projects will provide significant steps towards providing the capacity and flexibility that intermodal importers and exporters desperately need to add value, increase reliability, and decrease costs. Other projects in that portfolio are critical to supporting the green energy transition that BC and Canada will need to be successful in, building on our current success already in lower carbon LPGs and biofuels that are moving through the port, and adding capacity for low and zero carbon options. So with that as context, PRPA has the following recommendations for the BC budget: to enable resilient and reliable supply chain gateways, accelerate pathways to sustainable operations, and ensure that economic growth is broadly shared. Number one, continue targeted public sector investment into critical supply chain solutions. Trade infrastructure projects are big, hairy projects in the public interest. Some aspects can sometimes be outside of the private sector investment business case. Considering case-by-case public investment into future capacity redundancies and especially related community infrastructure in partnership with the federal government is especially relevant to northern BC. The potential for rapid growth of this industry is a challenge for relevant smaller communities as they struggle to provide complementary community infrastructure. This is particularly true in Prince Rupert, but certainly not limited to Prince Rupert as we talk about the Northern Transportation Corridor. While this industry bodes well for future economic success, including for municipal taxation bases, short-term financial capacity is a challenge, much like a growing small business struggling for the cash flow needed to facilitate its growth curve. The success of these communities is very much in the provincial and national interest. Number two, undertake strategic northern BC trade corridor planning in order to coordinate investments and maximize the potential for future export growth. The BC government has a unique role to play to bring together communities and stakeholders in a process that ensures coordination, collaboration, and prioritization of related initiatives and solutions through the corridor. And number three, prioritize investment and incentives to support labor force growth and development in the trade and transportation industry and their communities. This ties into my previous points of investment into sustainable, livable communities and ensuring that they can continue to grow by recruiting provincial, national, and international labor force. Similarly, finding and filling gaps in complementary skills training for local and Indigenous people and ensuring that it supports both current and future occupation opportunities has been a key ingredient for success and will continue to be in the future. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Ken. Renee.
Thank you so much, Chair, and thank you, Ken, for the presentation. We have heard other port presentations, and just the re-emphasis of how important Prince Rupert is what's really good to hear. My question is actually twofold, but one in that I want to talk about what we learned in this last year and the reliance on Vancouver's port. Is Prince Rupert Port at capacity currently? And how could we use the capacity to increase redundancy, or is additional capacity necessary?
Well, the short answer is additional capacity is necessary. If you look at the split right now of trade on the coast, it's essentially 85% runs through Vancouver, about 15% is out of Vancouver, and that's primarily Prince Rupert. And obviously, if we have a situation like we did last year, that is not going to be able to be shipped through Prince Rupert. Depending on the line of business, there is some additional capacity that is there, and certainly that was used during that time, in particular when it comes to grain and to dry bulk, especially coal. That being said, we continue to add capacity. In fact, there is a a container terminal expansion that is just completing. In fact, it should be open within 3 weeks, which will add some badly needed capacity on the container side, which is great. We're nearing investment decisions in both liquid bulk as well as complementary intermodal logistics facilities. So when we talk about our development portfolio, we're not talking about years away. We are talking about projects with incredibly reputable, world-leading proponents that are very much committed to building the type of infrastructure we need, and they're very close to either making investment decisions or, like I said, are actually under construction as we speak. So, very much a portfolio that is not aspirational, but is very much committed to growing.
Excellent, thank you.
Ben.
Maybe a little bit of a follow-on to Renee's question. I want to just better understand, is there overlap between Prince Rupert and Port Metro Vancouver in terms of what they're offering, and where both of them should be focused in on? Because I mean, Vancouver's got such huge diversity, and you mentioned the products that they distribute. But what is Prince Rupert best at, and where the overlap should be divided?
Well, it's from a commercial perspective, quite frankly, we compete with Vancouver. And so we are very much in similar spaces. That being said, both gateways have very unique advantages and play to them. And so I don't think it's necessarily a matter of dividing it up from a service perspective. It's very much a commercial element to that whole thing. But that being said, a lot of cooperation when it comes to how we grow, safety standards, environmental approaches, sustainability programs, et cetera. So you see a lot of cooperation from that perspective. But certainly our tenants in particular that actually own the terminals are very much competitive. But generally speaking, the single biggest difference is we're in a very small community. That gives us a lot of advantages of moving product through. Without the congestion, land use conflicts, et cetera, that you see within Vancouver. The flip side to that is Vancouver has a very large population base that provides both market and labor advantages, as well as, quite frankly, an established brick and mortar aspect to the port that, I won't understate how important Vancouver is to the BC and national interest and will continue to be. But that aspect of redundancy and ensuring that we've got options for our industries and for our province and, quite frankly, for our country on the West Coast is incredibly important, and that was really brought to a head last year.
Okay, thanks.
Henry, and that's probably our last question.
Okay, I'll make it as quick. I believe you mentioned something about the labor shortage as well. Do you mind me give a bit more specific? What kind of labor are you guys suggesting regarding to port expansion?
The short answer is everything. I talked about being in a small community and the advantages that brings. One of the things that it does not bring is access to a available labor pool. And it's impacting certainly port operators, but even the community as a whole, right? Obviously, it's a very high-wage industry from a port perspective, a relatively low barrier to entry for a lot of those occupations. So the small business community feels that as well. Our single biggest issue is we don't have enough people, period. So that ability to recruit into communities and ensuring we've got a livable community and a sustainable community that can manage that growth challenge is absolutely critical. And when you're talking about a small community that, and I could be speaking for almost any community, certainly in Northwest BC, that had a very significant economic depression through the early 2000s, and trying to manage that growth curve coming back up, it's a good problem to have, but it is going to be a challenge going forward in terms of having enough people and being able to train them up for the right jobs.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Ken. We are out of time. On behalf of the committee, I'd like to thank you for your presentation and thank you, for touching on actually almost all of the major challenges that we are facing as a province right now. And thank you for so clearly and articulately presenting the Port of Prince Rupert as one of the solutions.
Thank you for the opportunity. We'll be following this up with a submission that gives a little bit more detail, but certainly our pleasure to be here. And thank you all for coming up to the Northwest.
Thank you.
It's our pleasure.
Great to be in person, is it not?
It is.
Yes.
We'll take a short recess. Back to order. And I will entertain a motion to adjourn. All those in favor? The meeting is adjourned.